Well, I've had good introductions before, but that was a winner. A wiener, yes, indeed. Now, I must say that I am very honored to see a full house. I've seen full houses before, but this one is chock full, right to the very rafters. It's a little frightening in a way, because the washroom is all the way down there. And if you don't stand out of the way, I may be rushing through. Well, let's not get into all those details. Ladies and gentlemen, you see before you a very mature man who increasingly and truly admires sunrises somewhat more than sunsets, though of course both these phenomena are wonderful to experience, and who travels internationally reciting the undeniable facts of evolution, the glory of our species, the fictions of all paranormal and supernatural claims, and the happy circumstances that nonetheless allow us all to somehow survive together. That's a miracle in itself. Yes, it's a constant configuration, a constant skirmish in need of careful tending, wise shaping, and molding. Bear that in mind. Have you folks seen our documentary film, An Honest Liar? How many have? Oh, my. Well, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, I'd like to demonstrate one of the minor miracles shown there, and thereby prove to you that I am, as advertised, a professional magician. I haven't offered any proof yet. May I have two strong gentlemen, volunteers, from the audience, please? To come up the stairs. I think there are stairs on either side. Just two volunteers. Any will do. They've got to be brave. There we go. There's one right there, and a second one. All right, okay. How do you do? How do you do? What is your name?
I'm Charlie.
I knew that. And you are?
Michael.
I knew that too. Michael, you stay right where you are, and Charlie, you can step over here. Step a little closer. I don't bite, not yet. Well, let's go into the center of the stage here so that you'll be a little more good. Okay. Now, silly me, I forgot to ask, do you have a piece of rope about that long? No?
Other pants.
Oh, well, by a strange and somewhat contrived coincidence, I do have a piece right here. And I'm going to ask you to test this rope. Hold on to that end with both hands, please. Hold on to that end. And pull on it very tightly to make sure that it doesn't break or come apart or anything like that. Are you satisfied? Say yes.
I'm satisfied, yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask these two gentlemen, I'll remove my wristwatch. It's a cheapie, but I love it. So I'll just put this in my pocket for safekeeping. Didn't like the look on his face there at that moment. All right, now let's just move a little bit this way, both of us. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to tie me tightly, tie my two hands together behind my back in such a way that I won't be able to remove it. Okay. You got the picture now? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now you grab your end. That's your end right there. That's it. Hold on. Grab your end. That's it. Now pull on it very tightly. Oh, that's not tight. Come on.
Really?
That's tight. Okay. Now bring it around on top and tie the other hand on top. Make sure the audience can see. Oh, that's fine. Is there room for another knot? Tie another knot.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Oh, my. That's what I call tight.
Another knot.
Why not? Same price. I'm a sport. What the heck? Okay. Now, all right, step back into place, please, gentlemen. Now, I'm going to try to free myself from this quadruple knot now? Yeah. I'd call it a quadruple. Stand back a little bit. No, you stay right where you are. You're okay. Yeah. Oh, the rope seems to have fallen off. How about that? Thank you very much. A round of applause for these two gentlemen who were kind enough to come up here and help me. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Oh, my. I've been doing that thing quite a few years now, to say the least, and it usually accomplishes a certain amount of applause, and I thank you very much for your kind attention. Folks, I've been very fortunate to have met so many well-known personalities in science and literature and in politics who have made my battle against pseudoscience and outright flummery rather easier and more efficient. Certainly, any and all members of the skeptical community around the world, and that includes so many people here, have hastened to advise me and to inform me on subjects outside of my expertise. And I am, of course, very grateful for this freely given assistance. My primary purpose as a skeptic, a lecturer, and an author has always been to present to the public a rational, logical, and scientific view of the constant barrage of paranormal, pseudoscientific advertisements and presentations of harebrained theories that most certainly make what the media call to be news because they simply sound good and will produce appropriate oohs and ahs from an uninformed audience. Now, if that were the only damage done, the need for my strident voice on TV and radio, the lecture stage, and in print might not exist. But it does, because the damage that is done by the media in this regard can be lasting and very damaging to the public, and particularly to the young folks among us. And I emphasize that very strongly. Please pay close attention to the younger generation. Those are the people who can be very adversely steered in the wrong direction. Now, today on the internet and television commercials, we all know this. In fact, by all of the media, the American public are being offered merchandise, medical assistance, financial services, and investment plans. That pursuit of opportunity on the part of the entrepreneur is what we call the American way. And we must, of course, applaud originality and an applied work ethic. But when business becomes hucksterism, the public needs to be protected. How valid are these offers that promise instant weight loss, renewed vitality, overnight youth, and magical cures for everything from high cholesterol to poor circulation? And more importantly, how can we educate young people to judge these claims for themselves? I refer now to medical quackery. Let me give you a prime example of the sort of nonsense with which we have to deal. Major drug chains across the U.S. are offering, as part of their off-the-shelf cure-alls, homeopathic preparations that have zero content and zero effect. Now, I'll not go into my usual tirade on the worthlessness of this ancient notion called homeopathy, but I'll offer you a brief example of two of what it really is. First, a demonstration. Now, this demonstration I have done many times all around the world, and it has always been successful. But if the claimants of the homeopaths are correct, I should be committing suicide. I have a doctor friend here who is, there we are. Doctor?
Yes, sir.
We haven't really met yet. Oh, yes, we have. All right. Okay. Ho, ho, ho. Come right up on the stage, would you? And tell us what you have in your magic plastic bag.
We have homeopathic sleeping pills.
Homeopathic, I'll be all right. Keep your feet. Yes. Homeopathic sleeping pills. And what kind are they? Did you show us, please?
They're from Highlands.
Highland. Oh, Highlands. Yes. I seldom commit suicide with Highlands. But this is an unopened box.
Correct.
Okay, brand new box. No, the instructions are in here. I'll ignore the instructions for the moment. I can put that down there. Now this is a sealed bottle, is it?
It is indeed.
All right, would you open it up, please?
Okay.
Breaking the seal. And you've had this in your possession since you purchased it?
Since, yeah.
Okay. And what have we got in here? Oh, these are They're the size of aspirins. I like much smaller ones, but hold your hand out, would you please? And I'll put these into your hand. And now would you administer them to me one at a time, please? And I've got a glass of water, yes, all right. I have it right here. And, well, keep going. Oh, yeah, gotta hurry along.
Okay.
Can't wait to die.
How about 2 at a time?
2 at a time, sure. Yeah. I'll go for the bottom. Oh, my goodness, we've got a lot more.
There's still some in there?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yes.
Ready?
Mm-hmm. There, that makes it easier to swallow.
Okay, next. And what do they taste like?
Chalk. Go ahead. My jaws are getting tired along. And how many have we got left?
4 here.
Oh, all right. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, there's more in here. Yes, all right. Dump them out, yeah.
Oh my goodness, there's a lot.
I know your goodness has nothing to do with it. That's a Mae West wine.
I haven't.
Yeah, an awkward table.
All right.
Go ahead. Moving right along. Are you sure you're a doctor?
Oh, positive.
We're getting down to the end.
Oh, we still got at least.
Suicide is never this difficult.
This is
I'm
taking
sure.
a long time here. I know.
That's almost all of them, isn't it? But it doesn't have to, so I'm taking far too much time to do this, but goodbye, cruel world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what I've just...
Here, in case you want some more.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. A round of applause for the doctor, please. Now, on that box, as I read there, it says, take 1 tablet every 2 hours. Well, I rather hurried it up. There were quite a number of tablets in there. I took almost the entire thing, but it's such a chalky, nasty taste that I gave it up. What have I just consumed? Well, the list of ingredients that they have on the box says Avena sativa, 1X. Double strength. Ooh. As the major medicament that was in that huge handful of pills. Folks, that's Latin for oats, O-A-T-S. So maybe I had a breakfast cereal and I didn't know it. Just like in Quaker oats. Camellia is the second ingredient, has 1 part in 100, that's 1%. That's an extract of a common flowering weed, but also listed as the 3rd major ingredient of this sleep-inducing medication is Humulus lupulus. I bet you wonder what that is. I don't care much, but it's hops, as they use in making beer. The weed used to make beer. Well, how much of these did I get when I chugged down all 20 or 30 of those, oh, more than that, 30 or 40 of those pills in that package? How much medication? 0. It's made like this. This is a familiar thing with Donald Trump, too. This is what he used as a gesture all the time. And in American Sign Language, it means 0, nothing. But that's his use, not mine. It says on the label, in case of accidental overdose, contact a medical professional or poison control center immediately. and I'm not going to bother to do that. On another list of ingredients in a homeopathic medicine, I have the bottle right here somewhere. It's very small. Whatever happened to it? Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you came along. I brought him for that very purpose. Yes, right here. I think you'll love this. This is Arsen, A-R-S-E-N period, A-L-B period, 30C. This comes from Ainsworth's, which is a very, very, in fact, I think the major pharmaceutical house in the UK. And inside this are pills of arsenic. And yet it's given to children and to adults of all ages and in all illnesses. Aren't all compounds of arsenic poisonous? Can this preparation be sold openly on store shelves? Oh, yes. Another medication sold at the same drug chain, this one for nervous strain, is NECSS poison ivy. One would think that ingesting poison ivy would cause a certain amount of discomfort rather than relieve nervous stress. But folks, when you buy these quack preparations, you're buying nothing but filler. That was all lactic acid in those pills. There was no content in there at all. The point of this demonstration is not to prove that homeopathic compounds are safe. They certainly are, but to show you that they are useless. Now, I have a bit of videotape to show you, which I think will amuse you, and it's tape of a very old friend of mine, Johnny Carson. I did, I think, 44 shows altogether, live shows with Johnny Carson, and many of them were repeated on weekends and such. Johnny and I were pretty close. I hate to tell you this, but Johnny smoked all the way through his programs. Now, that was well after the decision had been made by the authorities that no host of a show or no participant in a show would smoke on camera. But Johnny actually had a small, what we call a muffin fan in electronics, a very small fan, electric fan, 12-volt fan, beneath the table in which he sat. And I'll tell you what is also sort of funny, but it's sad at the same time. Johnny Carson was such a dedicated smoker. He had a cigarette, a lit cigarette in a special holder underneath the desk, and he would wait for the camera, and he looked at the monitor up top there. He'd glance at it every now and then. He'd be talking to the guest and then looking up like this and quick glances at the monitor. And you can see tapes of his former shows. You can see tapes in which he is doing this. He's waiting to see when the director of the program turns the camera over and uses only the picture of the guest on the show so that he can quickly reach beneath the table, grab the cigarette, do a few puffs on it like that, and then put it right back in place and go right back into the same expression that he had just a moment ago. That's a talent. It really is. But John did this all the time. I can hardly believe that Johnny has left us because he should have lived. He should have lived if he had not had this dreadful habit. And I'm saying to young people, particularly young people in this audience, that smoking is a deadly habit. Now, I've never involved myself in it, smoking of any substance, as a matter of fact, and that's my choice. I don't think it should necessarily be everyone's choice because it is legal, actually, as alcohol is legal too, and think of all the damage that that does to human beings as well. But folks, I don't want to be a kill sport, you know. I don't want to give you rules to live by or anything like that, but I will suggest certain things. Tobacco is deadly. Now, on quite a different matter, one that the the JRF has been very concerned with recently. Federal and state agencies, police departments, the FBI, U.S. Customs, and the Border Patrol are annually spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of their budgets on devices and systems that have been tested by other federal agencies and found to be useless at best and fraudulent at worst. How can these agencies ignore the results of these extensive tests? Well, some years ago, the James Randi Educational Foundation made formal complaints to the FBI and to the FTC about a seemingly high-tech device that was advertised to be able to detect almost any object or substance, even without batteries. Wait a minute, I have one of these devices right here. This is a device called the Quadro. It's got a rotating hand on it here. It spins around very easily, and it has an attachment that you're supposed to make to it. And this is the attachment. This brass cup that you see here, I took it apart, of course, being the kind of person I am, sneaky and curious. I actually took it apart, it soldered together, and I found what was in it was a bent composition resistor, an electronic resistor, just one that was bent and put in there as something to rattle in there, and it was filled with a green powder. And I thought it looked familiar. So I looked it up in an aquarium store, and it was green aquarium sand in this brass container here. Oh, but there's much more to it. It goes on and on and on forever, just about. This is a dowsing rod. Now, the dowsing rod usually is a forked stick, and that jumps up and down depending on how much tension you put on the arms of the fork. But this thing is very freely rotating. As you see, I'm very adroit with it. You notice that? Oh, just about took my head off. That's all right. Now, I'm going to ask for someone in the audience who has some knowledge of electronic circuits. I'm sure we can find somebody with that knowledge. Is there anybody who would volunteer to come up on the stage and examine? Yes, sir. I'm going to open this up. Thank you. This gentleman, yes, I know this gentleman, but you haven't been asked to come up here just to help me out, to make me right. Okay? I'm going to open this up. Would you hold that
Certainly.
end of it? This is the other end of it here. You see the electronic circuitry here? Now, it's a little bit loose. This is an original dowsing rod that cost up to $8,000. And it has all kinds of resistors and capacitors, all sorts of things on there. But there is a serial number down in one of the corners here, and a model number. I looked it up. This is a very early version of a Marconi remote control for a television set. It has nothing to do with dowsing or finding substances whatsoever. And this interesting thing, this is the rod. You see the connection coming out here?
I do.
There's no wire going into it.
It does seem to be disconnected.
So this thing is not connected at all. It's just a big wand sticking out into the air. Would you say that this might have any use?
It probably rattles nicely.
Yes, and it does rattle, I noticed that. But look around here, you see little bits of foil stuck on here, different colored wires of all kinds, and just connected at random into the circuit. It doesn't work, and it never has worked. But this thing they get $8,000 for, plus tax, I'm sure, to be honest, of course. You wouldn't want to be deceptive. Thank you very much for your expertise, sir, and a round of applause for the gentleman, if you please. Now, that's the kind of thing that we're being swindled with all the time. And who falls for that kind of scam? Endless endorsements from chiefs of police and custom agents who have used this device to locate drugs and weapons Really. We at the foundation checked out those affidavits and found them supported. We'd not heard any response from the FBI or from the FTC to our warnings, but, listen to this, when we discovered that retired FBI agents were investing in $40,000 franchises to sell the Quadro locator, this device here, as it's called, and we informed the FBI office in Beaumont, Texas, our phones lit up with interest at the James Randi Educational Foundation. For the next 2 months, we obtained and forwarded to the FBI every scrap of information we could come up with, and finally the agency moved in and shut down the Quadro operation because they were selling to FBI agents. But why didn't they close it down well before that, when the public was buying these things and not just FBI agents? Oh, FBI agents are much more valuable, obviously. Currently, the Quadro scam has reemerged in a different guise, this time as a gimmick that is supposed to detect human heartbeats over long distances and through any barriers. Well, the James Randi Educational Foundation, in contact with Sandia Labs in Albuquerque, New Mexico, suggested to them an experimental protocol that was then followed, and definitive tests of the DKL lifeguard device showed clearly that it simply did not work. It was nothing more than a dowsing rod. And they bought several of them as an investment and found that the circuitry inside was different in every one of them. No similarity whatsoever. They were using other remote controls from other television sets, some discarded television sets that had already been junked. There's been another carrot offered in the Quadro and DKL investigation. We formally issued a notice to the managers and personnel of both companies that we would award any one of them our $1 million prize if they could actually make the device work. They ignored that offer, and that would seem to indicate that they rather suspected themselves that the thing didn't work anyway. Yes, the $1 million prize is admittedly a flamboyant gesture, but it proves our case every time. Any homeopathic manufacturer can earn that money just by being able to sell homeopathic pills from dummy pills. It's that simple and that direct. Any astrologer could win by casting a true horoscope. Any of the graphologists employed by the U.S. employment agencies to sort out honest from dishonest potential employees can retire in style if they can prove their abilities. Yet Wall Street investors are sold horoscopes to guide their clients. Yes, I would ask your stockbroker next time that you get into a conversation with him or her, do you use horoscopes? You might be surprised. The $1 million prize is an irritant to the scam artists, and they would dearly like to see it go away. Now, if the American public had a better understanding of astronomy than they do of astrology, if they knew more about numbers than about numerology, they would be better able to defend themselves against the charlatans who function freely. Unfortunately, the public's understanding of science is very weak. A large percentage of those who regularly scoff at the progress of medical science would simply not be here if it were not for the advances in our understandings of the world around us, and I'm an excellent example of that fact. That's exactly what science is all about. Science is part of our survival mechanism. It works and can be shown to work. If the quacks and scam artists out there do not have a record of success, and they don't, they leave behind them broken hearts, crippled bodies, and shattered dreams. A recent National Science Foundation survey shows that though an overwhelming number of Americans support scientific research and government sponsorship of the same, half of the Americans surveyed were unable to answer fundamental science questions about the world around them. Historically, there has been a close relationship among perception, misperception based on apparent reality, and scientific knowledge derived from critical analysis. An education in the process of critical thinking, investigating why we think what we think, trains students to fill in the gaps and inconsistencies in their knowledge base and to more accurately separate fact from fantasy. Now, the U.S. Patent Office at one time issued patents only after a working model of a proposed device or system had been produced. Regularly today, plans for perpetual motion and free energy machines, cheap and easy counterfeit money detectors, control systems triggered by thought waves, and devices that magically find drugs, guns, minerals, gold, and oil are received by that office. Are working examples still required by the office? No. The law has been changed. Now it seems that all that's needed is for a master to look over the application and to rubber stamp it. Ladies and gentlemen, we like to believe that we're sophisticated and aware, that we can't be fooled. But we're human beings with all the failings of our species. Customs agents, police officers, legislators, patent examiners, even scientists and technicians are all subject to bad judgment from time to time. It's inevitable. But much of that weakness can be avoided by education at an early age. We owe it to our kids to inform them and train them how to think. Notice I emphasize kids again. That's another generation, and we've got to do well by them. We have failed this generation. Let's not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of anymore. We can and we must oppose those who would cheat us. In my work, I've seen firsthand the ravages of superstition and misinformation. It's appalling. I can tell you, kids who have checked out of reality and adopted fantasies rather than facts, adults who have abandoned any efforts at improving themselves and want to hire gurus to run their lives. Now, I mentioned the film An Honest Liar. The reaction to that film has been wonderful, internationally and nationally. You can see it on Netflix, or you can buy a DVD or a Blu-ray of the disc itself. And I urge you to take a look for it. It's simply found on TV, on your Look for TV program channel. And I ask you to take a look at it, please. My personal heroes are few, but large. Carl Sagan was a good friend of mine. Oh my, how I miss him. Isaac Asimov was close to me in many ways. Martin Gardner was a minor god of mine. He'd laugh if he heard that. Richard Feynman and I exchanged many useful thoughts, and Richard Dawkins of Oxford has supported me and the James Randi Educational Foundation in many ways. But heroes should be more abundant. Lest you get any notion that this dependence upon nonsense is new to us, let me read you a quotation. Heroes have gone out, quacks have come in. The reign of quacks has not ended with the 19th century. The scepter is held with a firmer grasp. The empire has a wider boundary. We are all the slaves of quackery in one shape or another. One portion of our being is always playing the successful quack to the other. That was spoken by Thomas Carlyle, a prominent philosopher and historian, in the year 1881, 135 years ago. Has the picture changed? No, not very much. We are, it seems, reliving a bad aspect of our own history. We should learn from that and put an end to it. Folks, I'm honored to have been asked here today to speak to you, and I sincerely thank you for this very great privilege. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very sincerely. We will now have a question and answer period. I would like the lights to be brought up so that we can see one another. Oh, there you are. I knew you were out there someplace. And my goodness, this crowd goes a block away, literally a block away. Can you believe that? That's a block away, right to the back. So I don't know how we're going to quite do this. This is always sort of an awkward thing. We can ask for for people to come up. Oh, we've got the microphones out. Oh, we do have the microphones here. Oh, yes, I'm sure. Okay. All right, we've got people at the microphones all ready, and we'll start on this side.
Okay, thank you. The question I had, I don't know if you want to open up this can of worms, but I was wondering what your reaction was to the latest presidential election.
Oh, boy. I hesitate to comment on this, sir, because national politics are not an expertise of mine. I have my opinions, of course, but I think we've got to be careful of anyone who sits in positions of power, and particularly the White House. I've been to the White House and had a wonderful visit there. I have in my living room at home, I have a picture of me shaking the hand of Betty Ford. And she has a little red handkerchief stuck in her belt. And I should briefly tell you the story of that. My only visit to the White House, I must admit, but it was quite extensive and very, very rewarding. I was invited, you see, to entertain the children of the diplomats. They were in Washington at Christmas several years ago, of course, in the Ford administration. And as I walked in, was setting up the props and such, I saw Betty Ford walk in with a couple of Secret Service men on either side of her, and I made bold to walk over to her, introduce myself. The Secret Servicemen bristled, of course, and that's their job, bristling. And protecting people when they needed to be protected, and they were doing their duty. And I said to Mrs. Ford, I said, Mrs. Ford, I have to ask the audience. My audience had not come in yet, you see, the children of the diplomats. And I said, I have to ask for a small handkerchief. And I have one right here. Would you be kind enough? And I reached towards her, and the Secret Service man stepped forward, and he said, the First Lady does not take part in magic shows. Which I had already assumed. I didn't know that she was known for that talent, you see. And Mrs. Ford looked at him and said, Frank, that was his name, gave it away. She reached up to me and she took the handkerchief from me, little red handkerchief, and stuck it in her belt. She said, Mr. Randi, I'd be proud to wear your colors. That's my kind of assistant, don't you think? I was quite touched by that. And Betty Ford showed me around the White House in person. We marched up and down stairs and in elevators and out. Her husband wasn't home at the time, so I didn't get a chance to meet him. But I will never forget that experience, my tour of the White House by the First Lady of the nation. And I'm very, very proud of that fact. Thank you. Other questions?
Hello, Mr. Randi. From all the charlatans that you've dealt with, have you felt that they've all in their hearts believed what they were doing, or have you met some that perhaps are, of their own self-belief, of their own delusion?
That's a provocative and very good question. Many of them do. And we encounter the ones who really believe they have the powers genuinely, and we find that they're self-deceived. The reason that I can say that with a certain amount of confidence is that when they do answer the $1 million challenge, they come in full of enthusiasm and very confident and such, and then a routine like this will happen. Now, for example, if he's doing a reading of a person and he can tell about their family, and he'll say something like, you have a member of your family in mind, sir? Yes, I do. I'm getting this, this is a lady. No, it's a man. Oh, well, oh, in that case, I'll go for the husband. He looks a bit bewildered, and he said, well, wait a minute, is there an N or an R in your name? And the fellow says, no. I was getting both a B and a W and an N. And he said, B. Oh, there is a B in your name. You see? And that's the kind of reaction you get from him. He makes a whole number of guesses wrong, and one of them happens to be right, and he says, see, I've got it, you see? These people, in many cases, they do actually believe that they have the power, but they don't know how to evaluate their powers. I do, and when we do, we find, what's the digit? Oh yes, 0. I do remember that. That's my favorite digit when we come out of those meetings. But the $1 million prize has been offered at meetings of the James Randi Educational Foundation and such, which incidentally has changed its main motivation. Since I've effectively and officially retired from the JRAF, as we call it, those facilities are offered, and the money behind them have been offered to people who are suggested by skeptical groups. And there are many skeptical groups here represented. So if your skeptical group finds something that they don't quite understand and figure that it might be a paranormal or, well, let's say magical power of some kind, then get in touch with us and give us the information. And at our next meeting, we will test this person. Now, it's always, the result is always failures. And I feel very badly about that, because if they really believe they've got the powers, and then they find that they can't pass the test, of course they then say, oh, it wasn't properly conducted. I don't do my tests that way. Well, that's the way we do them, because that's called the reasonable and just and proper and correct way of doing it. So yes, the answer to your question is that some of those people really do believe that they have those powers. Another question?
Hi, Mr. Randi. I must say it's a pleasure to speak with you today, and I come here on the behest of my father, who is an evolutionary psychologist who recently retired.
Really?
He wanted me to tell you that he became an evolutionary psychologist because he saw you on Johnny Carson performing psychic surgery on Carson, and it was at that moment that he realized, oh my God, I'm a skeptic. So my question to you, sir, is what is the moment where you became a skeptic? Thank you.
Oh, good question. All right. I don't think I've ever had that question. At what time did I actually become a skeptic? I was an amateur magician, first of all. First of all, this is sort of an awkward story to tell you, but I was one of those child prodigy things, and not a very happy existence as a child, I must say. I was allowed to stay out of grade school, most of grade school, and I found ways of visiting theaters and libraries and wonderful places that wouldn't normally be available to me during school days. And I went to the Casino Theatre on Queen Street in Toronto, Canada, where I was born and raised, well, almost raised. And I saw Harry Blackstone, the great magician. Oh my, he made a girl float in the air right before my eyes. I was in the second balcony, and I was looking down on it, and my eyes were bugging out against my glasses, I'm sure. He made a woman float in the air. He had a speech impediment, and for magicians who knew him, they usually give me some laughs when I do this little imitation of him. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen this young lady floating in the air between heaven and earth. She could remain there, should I so desire, for 1,000 years and a day, but in the interest of your patience and of mine, I will cause her to descend to the couch from which she rose only a few moments ago. Azra, descend. And she would start coming down. Oh, I remember that experience. And I gave up the dreams I'd had of becoming an explorer and a few other things like that. And I decided to go into show business. and I've been in show business ever since. For the better or the worse, I'm not too sure, but I certainly hope for the better. And that memory of old Harry, descend, Asra, I'll never forget it. That was a big thrill in my day, and I realized that being a magician could invoke that kind of wonderment in an audience. And I've had many experiences of where I've been able to invoke that wonderment. But every single time I have closed with my performance with what you have seen is the result of illusion, created psychologically to deceive you. I trust that you will accept it as honest deception. That was my greeting to them, my saying goodnight to them. Got questions?
Yeah, what's your favorite illusion?
My favorite illusion is the next one I'm about to do. As a matter of fact, I have a bit of videotape I want to show you. This videotape is, well, some people may be a little disturbed by it. I remember it's another Carson show, and I always pose for pictures. I can't help myself. I must say that this one is something that I remember very, very fondly because, as I said, Carson was a pretty good friend of mine. I was the only one that he would come to whom he would come to the dressing room. That's not the right sentence, but you know what I mean. Because when he would knock on my dressing room door about 5 minutes before we started taping the show, it was always done in the afternoon, so they could do editing if they had to. It was pretty weird. I would hear this tap on the door, and I'd answer the door, and it would be John. He would come in, and I'd look over his shoulder, and there'd be people there looking and wondering why he was going into my dressing room, because he had a firm rule that everybody knew about. He didn't want to meet any of the acts before they actually went on camera and were being recorded. And yet here he was knocking on my door and asking to be admitted. And I brought him in, and he'd always ask me, what should I mention for you, James? What do you want me to say? And anything that you're plugging? He was trying to give me the advantage. He liked very much the kind of work that I did. And he was kind to me in that particular way. So the videotape you're about to see, I think, will be rather interesting. I ask you to pay close attention to it and see if you come to the same conclusions that we did. I got a thumb. That's always a good sign.
Point out again for the people who just might have joined us. For the people who might just have tuned in, a little word of warning here. If you have a queasy stomach, the sight of blood bothers you, we suggest you don't watch this. This is James Randi, who's going to give you an idea of what the psychic surgeons in the Philippines actually do on people who go down there and pay good money. You all set?
Indeed.
All right, we have our patient. It's all yours.
Okay. Now, this is the time to look away if you need to, because it's going to get a little gory from now on. The psychic surgeons of the Philippines are, are you feeling, Sandy, okay?
Everything's fine.
They're pretty heartless folks. They just don't much care for the feelings of people. They don't certainly care for their health at all. And of course, they're not in any way trained to do this sort of thing. They just put on an act as if they are trained. Now, what you're about to see is a bare-handed operation which appears to take place by actually penetrating the body. Believe me, what you're seeing is strictly special effects. It's sleight of hand and nothing more. And this is the way it looks. Anything that gets down there, we don't get it on your trousers if we can help it. Let me see. This is terrible. It's getting worse and worse. Wait a second now. Oh, no, that doesn't come out. A bonus. That's a bit better. Just a second. Just 1 second now.
Maybe better for you.
You don't feel any better? And the strange thing is, after this operation is all over, now mind you folks, I want you to bear in mind, please, that people are showing this as if it were really serious, as if it actually did take place, and as if surgery were really performed. People do this, they go to the Philippines, they spend their money, and they frankly return home, in most cases, to die. It's a little bit funny to watch it perhaps, and you say, gee, I know it's play acting, but it's not play acting when they go, by the tens of thousands every year. Sanford, I want to thank you for being a wonderful volunteer. I think you deserve a round of applause for that. Thanks very much. I'll give you your way. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, James Randi.
Well, I wonder if we have any more questions that we could answer for these kind folks. Yes, ma'am. Louder, please. Oh, we've got a microphone on its way to you. There you are.
I have a device for you to debunk.
Okay.
It's, sorry, I took a picture of it. It's supposed to make your wrinkles around your eyes and your crow's feet disappear. It's an LED light, like a mask that you put on for 3 minutes a day.
Yes.
And then after maybe 8 weeks, you're supposed to have regrown collagen or something in your skin. And it costs $159.
Well. But
Yes.
if it works, it would be worth it, would it not?
Yes, it's called a Ray-Band. Light-emitting diodes, LEDs, have been proved to boost collagen, making wrinkles less noticeable.
Have you used this?
No.
I
No,
see.
not
How
yet.
did you get in touch and aware of it?
It's actually a famous dermatologist, Dr. Dennis Gross.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Do
Well-
you want me to email it to your organization?
Yes, I'd like to know more about that.
All right.
I don't have wrinkles. As you see, I have perfect complexion. But I would like to know about it, and I thank you for informing me about that. Yes, indeed. And you'll let me know, I'd like to know your name and address and such so I can stay in touch with you. Please. Okay, very good. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Randi.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the lie detector tests that are used in criminal cases.
The polygraph.
The polygraph. What is your take on the legitimacy of the polygraph tests?
How do you spell bullshit? I have in my 11th book, coming up very shortly, a whole large chapter on the use of the polygraph. The polygraph is a wonderful device with all kinds of springs and needles and whatnot, inscribing graphs of various kinds. But the thing that astonishes me is the record of the actual performance of the polygraph. It's close to zero as far as really detecting lies from criminals or from people who are suspected of having criminal intent. It does not work. It is a totally fake device, and it all depends on the operator. Now, a friend of mine, Charlie Reynolds, many years ago, did it. He was a photographer, but he was very scientifically minded in other ways, and he did a test with the Department of Defense. And they found out that the thing did not work at all. It was just, it's not a fake, it's a device that actually does record various impulses that come from the human body and such, but it does not detect lies at all. It fails every definitive test. And yet it is still being used by our present government and by agencies because they have nothing better to use. It gives a great show, big needles moving back and forth and doing strange things, but it is an absolute fake. It does not work. The polygraph is something you should not be dependent upon. And if you were ever asked to take a polygraph test, different laws in different states cover these things in various ways. So you should determine what those laws are in your particular state and district. Because sometimes you can refuse the polygraph test and there'll be no repercussions from it. And most advanced states of the Union have that exact law. So be careful. Find out what your rights are before you refuse or accept any polygraph test. If you're a very good liar, like I am, as a magician, you've got to be an excellent liar. I took tests at the United Nations, as a matter of fact, when they asked me about the polygraph, and I told them, and I took tests, and I sat there and I lied my head off on every question they asked me, my initials even. Are those your real initials? No, they're not. They're actually PR. And the polygraph couldn't tell the difference between the truth and a lie. So do not depend on it. Don't depend on anything you heard about it. And determine what the law is. Can you legitimately refuse a polygraph test? Because in some places, you can actually be sent to jail for refusing to take the test. So be very careful of that. Other questions? Yes?
Mr. Randi?
Randy. Where are you?
Willie Rodriguez.
Hi.
Randy, recently Megyn Kelly was attacked for interviewing Alex Jones on NBC. As we know, he has an audience of almost 3 million people. He has attacked you directly. How do you respond? There's two questions. Was Megyn Kelly okay doing that interview? And what is your response of his attacks against you?
Who is this you're talking about? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones, the conspiracy.
Oh, Alex Jones. Never heard of him. No, I'm sorry. If Alex Jones has attacked me, not physically, but you know, in any way in print, I'm sorry, Alex. I never heard of you before. But write me a letter, okay? We'll see what can be done. Yes, sir, right here. Yeah. The gentleman have a mic? We got a mic anyplace? Hello? No, we want everyone to hear you, please. There he comes. We call him Swifty. There. Yes, sir.
Pleasure to speak to you, Mr. Randi. So I'm curious from a philosophy point of view, the coming of the humanoid robots, especially in Japan. We have a robotic rule from the 1970s, the uncanny valley, the feeling that humans get when they watch animation and representations of humans in robot forms, and the eeriness and the creepiness of it. I'm curious how you feel about the coming of humanoid robots, and I personally see a lot of this uncanny valley in magazine photos. Things are photoshopped so much. The skin pores are gone. I'm a photographer, that especially in things like Cosmopolitan, and where the people start to look almost robotic-like, because some of the clues of human skin tone are gone. They're so heavily made up. And I just feel we're at this place. I'm curious about your opinion about what's coming.
What's the name of the film that was made? iRobot? Is that it?
That was a bad remake of Mr. Asimov's.
Yes, a bad remake of
Isaac
Asimov's
Yes,
story.
iRobot and Caves of Steel
Yes,
are the
indeed.
two books. Yeah.
Indeed. I think that we are increasingly dependent upon, look at your computer now. Your computer does wonderful things that you cannot possibly do yourself without spending a great deal of time, and half a lifetime perhaps, to do some of the calculations, and the speed at which it works. Now, not every computer is perfect, and no single computer is ever always perfect, of course. It will make mistakes, but the things that we enjoy as just parts of our lives, intimate parts of our lives today, such things as iPhones, and I carry an iPhone around with me all the time, and I take photographs with it. Come on. That's almost supernatural right there. I point it at a person, press a button, and I get a photograph from it. But the idea of robotics, I think, is closing in on us. Oh, yes. I think that we're getting more and more robotic in our lives. And that doesn't mean that we're becoming robots, but it means that we're depending upon robotics and upon electronics, very, very advanced electronics, like the average computer. And I think that this age is upon us. We could call this the age of robotics, I think, very soon now. And I rather encourage it to a certain extent, just as long as you don't fall for any kind of fakery, because those things can be done in robotics as well, I'm very sure. Yes?
So, I have a store on 28th, and there are fortune tellers upstairs with all the usual Hazarai, all the zodiac signs and the usual stuff. And they've been debunked for hundreds of years already, but people still go to them, and I see them going up and down the stairs. So why do you think after all your research, the top reason why they're popular, but also why does everybody I tell this to say, oh, but I know one who's really good and real?
Oh, yeah, I don't think that I don't get this all the time, too, of course. But I say, come and prove your case. That's all there is to it. And $1 million prize is available for that very purpose. So come on, come forward. Let's hear from you. Fortune tellers and such, whether it's by the hand or by astrology or whatever, they're a very presumptive bunch. And in most cases, they know that they can't do what they say they can do, but they do make the claim. And the James Randi Educational Foundation has been seeking these people out for all these years. That's most of my 88 years, you know. But I challenge them. I challenge them to come forth, do what they say they can do it, and win the prize. That's all there is to it. It's that simple.
Hello, Randy? Hello. Thank you. Sorry, all the way back here.
Oh, way
really
back
far
there.
back.
All right.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today. I am a medical student, and I have done some work in end-of-life care. And a lot of my patients find hope in things that I don't believe will work. And I wanted your opinion on, are there times when you don't share your skepticism?
Are there times when I don't? I'm sorry?
When you don't share your skepticism.
Are you asking about me personally?
Yes.
I share my skepticism with everyone. Oh, yes. I got my 11th book coming out, as I said, and I do radio programs and meetings like this all the time, and I do share my very ardent skepticism. Now, skepticism isn't a negative thing. It's something that can be very helpful, because if you have a skeptical attitude, you can get to the truth much more easily, I believe. And it depends on the case, of course. Every case is its own particular story. But I think that, that I always will be a skeptic, certainly, and that I always have been since I was, I guess, about this big. When I went to Sunday school, that was what did it for me. Oh, I went to Sunday school, and they kept tapping the Bible whenever I asked, how do you know that's true? They would tap the Bible. I'd say, but who wrote that? Well, that was from John. But well, who is this fellow Corinthians in here? And, oh, no, that's a bunch of them. Oh, really? So there are many more authors than I thought. I fought them in Sunday school. I made a discovery. I must admit this to you. I was given a quarter by my father every Sunday to go to Sunday school, and I was supposed to put that in the offering plate, you see. And I did that the first week. But a note was sent back with me to my parents that I was not very welcome in the Sunday school class because I asked too many questions. And yet they invited me back for one more try if I would try not to ask so many questions, questioning the Word of God, you see. And so I went back the second time. And I didn't go back the third time, the next week, because I found out that for 25 cents, the coin that was given me, for 25 cents at Purdy's Drugstore on Bayview Avenue in Toronto, you could get 3 flavors of an ice cream sundae, but my friend Gary could only get 2 flavors because he only paid 20 cents, you see. And that discovery was quite powerful for me, I must say. And folks, my parents never found out. I would dress up on Sunday mornings and go out. Now that's a major deception of your own parents, and I admit it, but those Sundays, oh, I'll never forget them. Never forget them. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sure.
So, for how long have you been a magician?
I've been a magician. I've never been a magician. Actually, I'm a conjurer.
Well,
now, let me explain to you. The word conjurer is a word used in the UK much more than in the United States of America. But conjurer is actually the word that I should be using to describe myself instead of as a magician, a conjurer. That is a person who approximates the effect of a real magician. I can't do that, you see. I can't do real magic, and I admit freely, many of you don't, of course, but so I am a conjurer and not really a magician. But ever since I was a small kid, about your size, I think, maybe a couple of inches shorter, I'm not too sure, but I began studying these things from some wonderful books that were given to me by a godfather of mine. Godfather, imagine I had a godfather. Incredible to admit, but it's true. And I've never forgotten what I read in those books. In fact, one of them I still have. The book is called Hocus Pocus Jr. Can you believe that? And it's the first book ever published in the UK on the art of prestidigitation, that is, conjuring what we would call magic, perhaps. And it has all the fundamental tricks, not all of them, but many of the fundamental tricks are there, and it's a treasure, an absolute treasure. So, other questions?
Back here, Randy. Over here, to your left, in the back.
My left? Okay.
Your left, that's it.
Okay, I see. Oh, yeah, there you are.
Okay. During the time when you were on the TV circuit, there was also a very popular like mentalist. His name was Kreskin, the Amazing Kreskin, if I remember.
Oh, yes. I
Right.
used to think that was a dog food. You know, eat your Kreskin.
But
Stuff
I
like
remember he
that.
was very popular too, and he did a lot of card tricks, you know, cards in your hand, and he
Oh,
would
yeah.
guess the cards, or he'd have
Yeah.
somebody, a celebrity, hold up and look through the newspaper,
Yeah, yeah.
and then keep his eyes closed, don't show it to him, be able to put a magic marker on the words, and he would come
Mm-hmm.
up with the words. Can you share some of his strategies with us? That you
No,
think?
I'm not giving away tricks. No, I don't give away the tricks of the conjurers and the mentalists. No, it's not really fair to do that because some of the mentalists, Derek Brown, for example, in the UK, he is on a path now to admit that he is a trickster, though he doesn't use the word, that he is doing conjuring, and it appears to be mentalism. I encourage him in this direction, of course. He's a wonderful performer. He's done some fantastic shows, I must say. But I think that it's not legitimate. It's not really ethical. Is the word I was looking for. I thought of my sister Ethel, and I said that. Yes, not ethical. That's exactly true. I don't want to, and particularly with young people, I don't want to take away their interest in the charming art of conjuring, and I wouldn't want to do that under any circumstances. But I ask them to be honest when they do it. Now, when I do my mentalism act, and I do a mentalism act on occasion, when I do a true mentalism act, I always close it by saying, what you've seen here on stage was done by trickery. I am a conjurer. I'm not a real magician. I thank you for your kind attention. And after that, I often get some people who will come up to the stage to talk to me afterwards. Fellow will come over and say, "Oh, where you did that thing with the so-and-so and such." That was I really enjoyed that. But when you told the lady her phone number and you had never met her before, that's real SP, right? No. Come on, I know the difference between the real thing and the phony stuff, because you couldn't have known her telephone number. You had never met her before, and you'd never seen her before in your life. That's what she said, and you said. Now, how could you tell her telephone number? Well, there was something that happened in between that he didn't know about, you see. And that's how mentalism acts are often done. But some people will just get very angry at you if you say that what you did as a mentalism stunt was simply a trick. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to know anything about that at all. So, yes.
Good evening, Mr. Randi. I'm from the Paranormal Challenge of the Czech Republic, and we come across many really crazy claims, and I would like to ask, what's the most creative claim you've ever heard?
Creative?
Yeah, so not like outlandish, because there's all kinds of, I don't know, alien abductions and alien superpowers, so the most creative claim.
Oh, that's a very difficult question. I don't know that I have an answer for that, because I've come upon some that are so damn clever. I mean, they fooled me in many cases. Now, this is over 88 years, I have been fooled on occasion, and I've had to see it for the second time before it suddenly dawns on me, and oops, I guess that's the reason, that's why this thing happened. But I don't know, no, I don't have much of a good answer for that question. Fred, I wish there was something I could really floor you with, but if I did, I would probably have to give you the secret behind it as well. And ethically, I can't. Thank you, ma'am. Ethically, I can't really do that, and I would not do that to anyone in the profession. I try to be forgiving, I try to be understanding, and I only ask that they show a little bit of care in who they're showing tricks to, and if they're trying to do it unfairly and unfairly influence those folks into believing something that is absolutely not so. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, over here.
Oh, over there?
After all this time of dealing with faith healers and different people that claim they have magical healing powers,
Yeah.
you've seen the placebo effect happen in so-called patients. How do you describe what the placebo effect actually is? What's actually happening, in your opinion, when somebody does self-cure somehow?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding your
The
question.
placebo effect, like when you think that you're taking a medicine that has a cure
Placebo effect.
Yeah.
I wasn't hearing that properly.
Yeah,
I'm very sorry.
How do you explain it?
Oh, no, the placebo effect is very strong. It can be very strong. The placebo effect, folks, is the effect that you take a medicine that's absolutely useless and it seems to have done something for you. And in many cases, it's strictly suggestion. People suggest it to themselves, or something happens in their body, and this is a mysterious thing that we inhabit, you know. Something happens in their body that sort of clears up or makes them feel a little bit better for no very good reason except that they're getting better. And they look at it and they say, oh, it must be that medicine that I took. And that is the way a great deal of it happens, unfortunately. And the placebo effect, however, can be very, very strong. Very strong, and so you've got to watch out for that you really are assigning a recovery from a disease or an ailment of any kind or a pain to the right cause. So be very, very careful of that. Yes, sir?
You frequently have to tell people that they're wrong, and people don't like being told that they're wrong. So what strategies do you use to get people to actually change their mind and believe facts and truth?
That's a very deep question, I must say. Yes, how do you? Well, you sometimes need a lot of time to sit and reason with people. You got to look them straight in the eye, sit them down, and try to work the thing out, to tell a story with them, and ask them to think about the answers to the questions that you will ask them. It's a very difficult thing to do, and to give you a pat answer on how to do this is really very difficult. But there are ways of doing it, and there are books on the subject. Of course, I can't think of one now, of course. As soon as I say there are books on that particular subject, I can't think of one. But there are books on this sort of thing, this kind of reasoning. You've got to be very careful how you treat people. Every person that you run into in which you invoke some trust, it's got to be serious. It's got to be a serious matter for you. You've got to be very kind to people who don't understand how their minds work in many cases and the decisions that they come to. I know that, well, the people who come to me and say, you couldn't have told that woman her telephone number, so you just have to give up on them, because they're the kind who will walk down the aisle and out of the theater and never turn around and look back at you and never want to talk to you again, which is not a bad idea in some cases. But you've got to be thoughtful. You've got to be kind to folks like this. Yes, it's a responsibility, and I would say treat it with great care. Don't be adverse to people. Don't be nasty to them. Don't insult them. Don't insult their intelligence. That's the one thing you can't do with many people, is insult their intelligence. And it's important not to do that. Be kind. I'm getting a finger pointing. Over here? Yeah.
Do you have a personal definition of what it means to be a skeptic?
A definition of?
A personal definition of what it means to be a skeptic.
Well, person who is skeptical. Skepticism is a healthy attitude, I think. And I've always found it to be a very healthy attitude, and it's taught me a great deal. I've learned much from being skeptical, but I'm not skeptical of everything. There are things like love. I've experienced it. We've all experienced it from relatives or friends or from companions. We've experienced that. And it seems like a flimsy thing. It seems like a sort. No, it's not, because I have had people prove to me that they really love me by doing things that involve sacrifice on my behalf. And when you get something like that going for you, that makes you a believer. And I can be made a believer. I'm a skeptic, but I can be made into a believer if the evidence is there. And I've had that evidence offered to me many times over my life, to my great delight. So, I see people pointing arms in different directions.
Hi there. So big data and AI are obviously powerful technologies, but along with them comes a lot of woo, from crime systems that detect if you're a criminal based off of what kind of features you have, to Theranos trying to sort of do some flam with testing. Do you see a new generation of skeptics looking into the new technology to try and debunk things that are still a little advanced, like the bleeding edge of technology needs sort of the bleeding edge of skepticism?
Well, I do say, looking at this crowd, I think I'm among very good friends here. I certainly hope so. And some people who have a certain amount of respect for what I've done in the skeptical field. And I hope that too, of course. And I'm very flattered by it and humbled by it when I hear people expressing things like that. But I think it's improving myself. My observations of the scene, especially from some of the books that have come out, by Richard Dawkins, for example. Now, I swear that you could take a book by Richard Dawkins, open it up at any page at random, and start to read, and find that you can't take your eyes off the page and you have to turn the page to the next one. And a book like that can grab your attention, and it's a skeptical book. Oh yes, Dawkins is certainly a born skeptic and a dedicated skeptic in all ways. To write a book like that, to be able to capture your attention and make you turn those pages, that's a magical thing. Just about magical. Just about. Not quite, but just about. So, and I don't compromise myself, you see. But yes, I think that attracting a crowd like this of people who I believe are reasonably skeptical, would you say that's true? Okay. If we can gather a crowd like this of people who want to know more about skepticism and how to honor it and to practice it, I think that's a pretty good sign myself. And I enjoy it and I celebrate the fact. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm in a strange state. I look at this crowd that goes right back to the wall there. I look at the faces of many people here who I know, and I've known for years in some cases. I'm humbled by it. I'm very humbled by it. I'm grateful to all of you for having come to hear me speak. Thank you very, very much, sincerely.